Well, as Nigerians contend with the numerous challenges in Saturday's elections, including the issues associated with the bimodal voter accreditation system, that's the BVAS, Arise News can confirm that the Nigerian police has arrested members of a syndicate suspected to be involved in the BVAS manipulation. Now, this follows a sting operation on a premises suspected to be the operational center of the syndicate at Ganges Street in Highbrow, Maitama district, right here in Abuja. Well, the Nigerian police is currently investigating the illegal possession and suspected manipulation of the BVAS. One of those being interrogated is the vice president of a company, Emperor Technologies.
Now, so 3 days on, and vote counting in Nigeria's presidential and National Assembly election continues, but it is a process that has become mired in deepening controversy. Now, results from 29 states have been announced at the National Collation Center in Abuja so far. The APC and the PDP are currently tied with 10 states under their belts each. The Labour Party has won in 8 states, with the NNPP clinching victory in Kano. So it is hotly contested between the 3 main parties, the closest it has been in years.
To get the constitutional 25% requirement in the FCT, and so cannot win the election. Well, these comments have ignited a conversation and more controversy. So the question is, what does the Constitution say about all of this? All right, joining us now, RISE analyst Ebon Udom will be expecting Dr. Sam Amadi, who is a lawyer. He'll be helping us break down the legalese as far as all of this is concerned. Ubong, so good to have you on this special. First off, your reaction to what we just saw there, this syndicate.
I think there's more to it. I think this is just there has to be a lot more, and so I don't jump to conclusions. I try to follow the facts. So as the facts come out, we'll get to know. But it's interesting that right after all the complaints about the BVAS system, that we now find that there's a compound right here in Abuja where they have these BVAS machines. And, but I suspect there's a lot more to this.
Do you think this justifies those who are calling for the outright cancellation of the election?
I don't know. I don't know that this does. However, it's interesting that this discovery is made as these complaints are being ratcheted up.
Well, again, this has to do with some technology, because one of the syndicates arrested is seemed to be a tech expert. But again, by and large, recall we had this conversation, and you did say Nigerians shouldn't be so much in a hurry to ask INEC to get the results out. But let's talk more a little bit about the activity of the police in this case. Perhaps citizens can also volunteer more information to the police to help unravel if there are more, as you say.
Well, normally the way police operate, someone tipped them off on this. And there's always a reason why someone does what they do. So, you know, being a journalist, everyone has their agenda. And, you know, if someone tips up the police, it might be that they want to flesh this story out. And so we'd like to follow it where it leads. But I don't want to jump to any conclusions right now.
So now let's talk about the coverage so far. You've been in Abuja since your arrival, and you've seen how much of you know, reportage that we've gotten so far. So give us an assessment of what the local media and even the international media has done so far.
Well, local media, let's start with international media, because that's what I'm part of. And today, what they wanted to know was the significance of the Obi win in Lagos. What does it mean? It was something that fascinated the international community. And the other thing that is fascinating them now is what's happening with the FCT, and the fact that the FCT might be in play because of the provision that requires the states, I believe it's 25% in 3/4 of the states, plus the federal capital territory.
Yeah.
And none of the major parties got 25% in the federal capital territory. So what does that mean? And that's probably what I'll be explaining tomorrow when I get there.
You want to wait till tomorrow before you get to explain all of that? What exactly can you make of it now? As things stand?
I don't know, because
let me just put this in, because look, Labour Party so far, what we're hearing, has scored 8 states in its kitty. The PDP has 10, and the APC, being told that it's 7 actually, but you know, the figures are fluid. So yeah, and PDP has 10, APC 10. That might change, anytime soon. But when you see the PDP in alignment with the Labour Party and maybe a few others who are insisting that, look, this thing has been rigged, it's not acceptable. What do you make of it? You know, because some are saying, with the figures we're seeing, where you have incumbents actually losing, their seats, their aspiration for the Senate.
There should be some credibility to those numbers, because we've had upsets of the people in power.
Right.
And very powerful people as well. Ex-governors. Oh no, they're still governors.
Sitting governors.
Sitting governors. So sitting governors, 3 sitting governors have lost their attempts to go to the Senate. So that's not something that normally happens in Nigeria, because sitting governors in Nigeria are very powerful. They control the entire state coffers, and they use it at will most of the times, and it helps them get re-elected and get into the Senate because that seems to be the tradition in Nigeria now, that after serving your full term as governor, you then go into the Nigerian Senate. So it's fascinating, because you have these complaints. At the same time, if you look at the breakdown, you'll find that it seems there's some validity to a lot of the voting that has gone on. Peter Obi has won in the southeast. He's also won in the north central. He's won in the west. You have the same situation with Bola Tinubu. He's won in the southwest. He's won in the south-south. He's won in the northwest. He's won in the northeast. So it's quite interesting how it's panning out. But what will happen in the long run is there will have to be some type of coalition deal to run the National Assembly. That's the way it's looking right now.
That is if they don't follow the same tradition of the campaign and moving to the party of whoever becomes president.
Yeah, to the ruling
governing
party.
As journalists, what we should perhaps be setting as an agenda now is how the political parties can ensure that whoever gets into the National Assembly, if you're hard done by and you say you want to ditch the party, then you can leave the seat and just take a walk.
Well, you know, that has been litigated severally in Nigeria, where we've had situations, I believe, before the 2015 election, which was the last election that I covered here. You had a situation where a number of governors switched parties just before the election. They were PDP, the ruling party at the time, the PDP party. I believe they were led by Bukola Saraki, who was then the governor of Kwara State. And that was a game changer. And when he went into the Senate, he emerged as the Senate president. That was also an issue where it was I believe, was it not litigated that they changed parties?
Yeah.
You know, and so this is part of the landscape as far as Nigerian politics. But this time it's a bit different because we have four parties four major parties that will have a say in
the National
Assembly.
Right, but before we bring in Sam Amadi, Dr. Sam Amadi, our Rise News analyst, let's clarify. The Labour Party right now, presently, as we speak, has 7 states in its kitty. The PDP has 11, while the APC has 10 states. All right, and NNPP, of course, has 1 state, being Kano State. Let's bring in Dr. Sam Amadi. Dr. Sam Amadi, good to have you. Let's talk about the, brewing discourse around 12 to 3rd. Is the Constitution vague on the issue of how a candidate can emerge winner of the presidential election? Let's even take it from this situation where the two parties they're almost neck to neck. Just like we read out, I mean, the PDP has 11, the APC has 10. And if you don't, according to some lawyers who've been, covering this all day, they're saying if you don't make 25% in the FCT, you cannot be deemed to have won the presidential election. Help us understand this. Is the Constitution vague on it?
It's not vague at all. It's very clear and elaborate. The Constitution sets out the scenario very carefully. And let's say that I think the draft of the Constitution are very brilliant persons and wise. Whoever is going to be the Nigerian president should be someone who has broad mandate. This is more so in a plural society with a plural religion, ethnicity, and social groups. And so wisely, you have to not just majority takes the vote, but also it must be a majority that is broadly representative and symbolic of the various diversity of the country. So first, you have to have majority vote, so that's democracy. But again, this is what we call in constitutional theory, super majoritarian. So not just a majority, but a majority that covers that captures several areas. So first, majority. Second, 25% of 2/3 states. Now, the only rider there is the constitutional language says highest number of votes cast at election, also not less than 1/4, 25% of votes cast at election of each of the at least 2/3 of the 36 states and FCT. Now, the real problem, that's when you have the majority, you must also have 25% in 2/3 of the states. The issue here is 2/3 of the states, does it including FCT or an FCT? Now, if you look at the grammatical structure from a critical point of view, that sentence could be broken down to say you must score 25% of 2/3 of the states, 1. 2, 25% of FCT. So the conjunction and means that all the states of the federation, 1 leg, 25% of FCT. Again, from a legal point of view, one can argue that it suggests clearly that FCT is a must win. And what could be the reason for that? The reason is simple. Because FCT was conceived as a melting point. So if the objective of the constitutional molders is to have a presidency that captures the essence of Nigeria, then it reasons that FCT representing, don't forget in 1976, the Akiola-Goda Committee recommended this place as a kind of no man's land. Not that it has nobody, but a place will have center of the country geographically, a place that will have enough capacity to create if you like, a spectrum of Nigeria. And that's why the Aboriginal owners of this city were also pushed further off, compensated or not compensated. So the logic here, therefore, is that there's enough constitutional material in the constitutional interpretation. We refer to what we call legislative history. What is the mind of those who crafted this constitution? And one can argue clearly that their mind is to have a president because of our history of ethnic domination. For 1958, the Willikes Commission, where the major ethnic groups seem to dominate. When we go to the Macpherson Constitution in 1954, we saw how regionalism created a divisive pressure in the country. So post-military, which the military was more like a unifying entity that tried to govern from a centralized perspective. So having created Abuja as the federal capital territory, it designates Abuja as a must-win, or at least good showing in Abuja to qualify. I will take that view, reading grammatically and. Now, if you look at the Constitution in other references, they say FCT, or they say including the FCT. So if you had said including the FCT, one will argue that the 25% of 2/3 states, meaning 36 plus 1, 2/3. So even if you don't get that one, but you have enough to qualify as 2/3, in this case, some will argue to 25 or thereabout 34.6. We don't have decimal, maybe 25 states. So that will be clear, including. But saying you must get at least 25% in 2/3 of all the states of the Federation and Abuja, grammatically simply means, one, you must have 25% of 2/3 of states of the Federation. Second sentence, you must have 25% of FCT. Copulate it together through a conjunction, and it becomes the winner must have 25% of 2/3 of all states in the Federation and the federal capital territory. So there's no getting away from that grammatical
Let me
rule.
jump in
and
here.
Yes,
quickly here, and it looks as if the law is being twisted now. So that is why we need some clarity here. Yeah, some lawyers, and from what I see here, it looks to me that it's not compulsory for a presidential candidate to win the FCT. And we'll go to section 2991 of the Constitution, which provides that the provisions of the Constitution shall apply to the Federal Capital Territory as if it were one of the 36 states. In this case, you can make FCT the 37th state. And it went on to say in section 134 of the Constitution, which provides that, quote, not less than 1/4 of the votes cast at the election in each of at least 2/3 of all the states, and the FCT, end of quote, means 25 states or 24 states plus the FCT. So winning the FCT by candidate is not compulsory.
No, that's wrong. That's actually, that reinforces my position. Now, let's take the first place. That it argues that FCT should be taken as a state. What that constitutional provision is seen several places in the way we treat FCT as a state. But don't forget also, when it says plus FCT, read that carefully. And the Supreme Court has said the way to interpret a constitutional text is literally, except there is any mischief or such literal interpretation creates absurdity. Now, if it says that a candidate who scores the highest number at any election in accordance with section, okay, if it says the Federation plus, now, it's not including. Plus means it's additional to what is provided. Plus does not mean including what is provided. Plus is additional. So what I'm saying is that there are two levels to look at it. The first is the grammatical level. That sentence, through a grammatical analysis, simply means, A, there is conjunction brings two, I teach legal theory, I teach legal drafting, I used to teach in base legal drafting. And the first will say what we call compound sentences, simple sentences, compound sentences, and complex sentences. Now, the thing about simple sentences are sentences where what we call subject and predicate is one. So you must win this. Okay. Compound sentences is when two simple sentences are joined together. So I've told you, grammatical analysis, that if the phrase says you have to have 25% in 2/3 of all the federation, one simple sentence, you have to win 25% of FCT. Another simple sentence. When you use a conjunction, you have created a compound sentences having one subject and two predicates. Win 2/3 of 25% of total states. Win 25% of FCT. The other references we made confirms that because it says plus. So it's plus the FCT. So the point here is, and of course the court may take different views on how they construct the provision. But I'm saying that from a literal reading of this section, and many of us can say maybe this is something we need to change in the future. And it never came up for determination because if I remember very well, in the previous election, the person who won, President Buhari, got more than 25%, and nobody really raised. Now that maybe we might head into this issue, it will be an issue for the court to determine. But I'm saying here that on grammatical and constitutional reading, nobody can dismiss that.
And Dr. Amadi, now you're talking about constitutional reading. That is why we have to go back to the Constitution, because we have some bit of conflict. Explain to us, if you have conflict between an act, in this case, the Electoral Act, and the Constitution, I'm very sure the Constitution is supreme. So that is why we go back again to 299, which is so clear there. And I read, the provisions of this Constitution shall apply to the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, as if it were one of the state of the Federation. And accordingly, you can see all of those things accorded to states were listed there on paragraph A, B, C, before you get to the other part.
Let's bring in Ebong here, really, so that, I mean, all this discussion really shouldn't even be happening at all, because Dr. Amadi says the Constitution actually recognizes the FCT as a state, if I got you correctly. Ebong, what's your understanding of all of this? Really?
Well, I am trying to look for an explanation so I can explain to the folks outside this country who want to know what's going on here. And my question is, does this affect the declaration of a winner?
Good point, and that's the point. Or should it? Dr. Amadi, did you hear Ebong's question?
I heard him very well.
Yes.
Now let's, 2 points very clear here. You said about constitutional interpretation, and you're right. See, when you say should be treated as a state, for the purpose of benefits that states receive, and it listed those benefits how you should treat Abuja as part of a state for different reasons, okay? But again, don't forget, in the same constitution, Abuja has many distinguishing features. Abuja does not have a governor, states have governors. Abuja is legislated by the National Assembly, states are legislated by state assemblies. So there are ample evidence that also in many ways the Constitution treats Abuja in some respect as different. Now back to the issue of that interpretation. Yes, Abuja is a state. It should be treated as a state, like you said, not a state. It should be treated as if it was a state. But it's a must-win state. What the question we should ask ourselves, why should the Constitution designate one territory that should be taken as a state and said, for you to be a Nigerian president, you must win? Many people have argued that this is really a needless provision, and we can argue that maybe it should be taken out. But I'm saying the way we interpret constitutions, every constitutional provision is presumed to be meaningful and presumed to be what the writers intended, except there is any real literal absurdity. And I'm saying careful reading suggests that there is nothing irrational, illogical for a country that is seeking, by the way, many countries in the world, there are no requirements of two-thirds or such broad kind of inclusion. And that's why we say that constitutions are so generic. They are unique to themselves. They are an evolution. They speak about the historical contingencies and contemporary experience of a nation. Nigeria can even, for example, under Abacha's constitution, provided for multiple presidencies, provided for rotational presidency. So the character of a constitution is unique to it. And so back to the question Ebong asked, before you declare someone a winner, and that's what INEC is doing now, you collect the results, and then you validate those results. And when they are convinced that these results represent what they consider valid votes, if Mr. A has got the highest majority vote, easy to determine, look at the total tabulation through Excel or whatever. The second question they will examine and determine is, has he got the spread? Now, it is then the returning officer, the INEC chairman, who will make that reading and say, this section doesn't require me to look for 25% of 2/3 of all the Nigerian state of the federation, including FCT, in which case he adds FCT as a 37 state, like you said, and does the mathematics, whether it comes to a fraction or a whole number, 24 point something or 25 or 24. He checks it off, you have crossed that qualification, he therefore declares whoever has those two twin qualifications as the president-elect. If he takes the reading, which the reading I'm saying is the correct literal reading of that constitutional text. If he says, what the constitution says is 2/3 of 25% of 2/3 of 36 states plus 25% of FCT, which in this case is reckoned as one of those states, but in this case designated extra as a must, not must win here, but you must show acceptability, 25% in the FCT. If he takes that view, then he will look at whether the man who has the majority vote and the guy who has these numbers have met this threshold, and they cumulatively, if he has met it, he will declare the winner. So these are not academic, considerations. They are the condition precedent to a declaration. Now, there could be a misdeclaration. The point with INEC is that INEC even has more powers than the courts in the Electoral Act. But court has final powers. So, for example, the Electoral Act does not require a court to invalidate a return by INEC for non-substantial violation. So even if it's a small violation, the court can say it doesn't matter. But INEC has the powers to invalidate all the elections, any election. INEC has the powers to make a wrong declaration, which the court can correct. So it rests on the return officer to interpret that constitution. But what we are doing now is to shape how he will understand that constitutional interpretation. So it's not academic. It's what you must determine before you make that declaration.
Still staying with you, Dr. Sam Amadi, I mean, you are the lawyer, so you'll help us understand this. If the FCT is a state, why does it not have a minister as required by the Constitution for all states?
You have made a case beautiful. That is why I say FCT is not a state. The Constitution says should be. In some circumstances, I made a point. I said it looks like a state for some consideration. It's not a state for some consideration. No state in this country is made law that is under the legislative competence of the National Assembly. But FCT is under the legislative competence of National Assembly. No state in this country is run by a minister, a cabinet minister reporting to Mr. President. So this is a federal territory, just like you have Washington, D.C. The difference here is that our Constitution has chosen to make this territory a place where to win, you must have good showing. Now, look at the U.S. constitutional framework for declaring a winner. Different states have weighted scores, which are historic experience. At the end of the day, it comes to a college represented by the House of Reps, not the Senate. So there is always peculiarity around constitutional definition for states. In Nigeria, that peculiarity arising from our history of divisiveness and the quest for FCT was to find a unifying factor. That culminated in the constitutional makers thinking, and the language of constitution must be presumed to be intended. There are no surplusage, there are no hanging phrases. Whatever they say, you must read it as what they intend. So in this case, they intended that you must at least have 25%, 1/4 of the votes cast at the election, each of at least 2/3 of all states in the federation and Abuja. So now, look at it. You must score 2/3 of what? All states in the federation, yes, 1, 2/3 of federal capital territory. There is no other grammatical way to make sense of this if you look at the principles of sentence construction and how sentences are joined together. And then I said constitutionally too, you must interpret the Constitution according to the fact that it's simple, it's lexical phraseology, except somebody has any other legislative history where the legislators or those who have this constitution said this is what they mean. One of the problems of our constitutional interpretation is that we don't have a rich archive of what we call legislative history. For example, if this was a constitution made and the constitutional delegates had a big debate recorded in history, somebody argued, should Abuja be given a trump? He said, yes, it's not. Somebody said, don't know, and the finally said, okay, let's give Abuja a trump. This will be a historical evidence to aid our interpretation. But of course, we don't have that. So what we have to presume, and almost irrefutable, is that whatever they said in lexical term is what intended. And the point I'm making therefore is that saying Abuja is a state is not correct. Abuja is taken as a state in some respect, and in some respect it's not a state. And the example you gave is he has a minister of federal capital territory reporting to the president. He has a national assembly making law for it, whereas the states have state assemblies and governors.
Right, Dr.
So
Sam,
Abuja is a state.
Dr. Sam, Ebong has a point to raise about what diasporans may be asking right now.
Now, if no one meets this constitutional requirement, what next? A runoff?
Sure. The Constitution, again, very detailed provision. The Constitution says if nobody meets this, you take 2 steps. First, the man who has the majority of votes cast, you put him in one box. Not the man who has the largest 25% of the states. No. The first person, the first pick for this is the one who has a majority of the highest number. No, the first one is among the first one is A, 3A. Let's go 3A if you don't mind. So yeah. 3A says section 134 sub 3A says the candidate who scored the highest number of votes at any election held in accordance with subsection 2 of the section. So you pick, if nobody got 25 as required in 24 states plus 25 in FCT, you pick the man who has the highest number of votes. He might actually have 25% in 5 states, 6 states, but you have the majority vote. What does that mean? First, this is the man who most of Nigerians have voted for to be their president, but not the man who meets the spread. The second person you now pick in 3B, if you go to B, is the man who scored the highest number of votes in the highest number of states. This is not the man who has the highest number of 25 in states. No, 25 is gone. Nobody got it. So 2 people will run. The man who has the highest number of votes total, whether he has 6 states, 25 or 2 or 23, he runs. The second pick is the man who wins majority. So if Sam Amadi is a candidate and I got in, let's say, in Kano State, highest number of, I won the highest in many of these states, but I didn't get 25 in many. So A has 22 states, I have 21 states where I had 25%. But I actually won more states, 10 states, that A, who got more 25 than myself. I'm the second to do run-up. So what the run-up will now be is between the highest voter, the guy who has the highest number of votes, and the man who won in more states. Now, if there are a number of people who have the highest vote in highest number of states, then you go back to who has among these 2 or 3 or 4, who has the highest total votes, because they all have the same equity. They all have highest number of states. You choose the one with the highest total vote to run with the man in box A who got the highest total votes. So that's how the process is. So the Constitution has provided clear principles. If nobody got this, INEC will say, bingo, we pick the highest vote. Let's say it's party A. Then we'll look at the remaining guys and say, which of these guys who won in more states is Mr. C? Mr. C and Mr. B runs. Even the Constitution goes further to say, if at that race nobody wins, it provides for another prospect until by a simple, in that case, and when they run it again, you're looking at spread again. But if nobody makes it again, then you take simple majority vote. So this could last into 2 reruns. That's why I think INEC provides for 2 weeks interval between the presidency and the governorship, because the Electoral Act provides for, in fact, the Constitution provides about 7 days. Within the next 7 days of the election, you would do that. The question is, if this process drags, when is the 7 days, starting from when the election held, or when the INEC has made this decisive determination that there is no winner? Those are issues that INEC will deal with. Complex, but I think clear.
Dr. Amadi, this is very interesting because several times the highest vote getter in the U.S. election has not emerged as the president because
Absolutely.
we have an electoral college which
Correct.
is based
All right,
on the number of
unfortunately,
states.
gentlemen, we have to cross live to the National Coalition Center. Yes.